Hello and welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to show you how to do the one row buttonhole. I've been using this buttonhole for many years now and I really like it. I use it for all my cardigans and I've released 4 cushions this summer, I think, where I've used them as well. This is the squared off cushion, which is mitered squares, but I've also released a lace cushion and 2 colorwork cushions where I use the one row buttonhole. And I've also used it in a couple of scarves I've released this year. So I use this buttonhole a lot, so I thought it was about time I did a tutorial for it. It is part of my online finishing techniques course, which I'll link to below. I also teach it in my in-person finishing techniques workshops. If you want to know where I'm teaching next, check out my website. There's a page there called Workshops and Online Courses. All my online courses and my in-person workshops are listed there. Also make sure you sign up to my newsletter at YarnAddict.co.uk and you'll find out where I'm teaching next. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you're new here, my name is Anniken. I design knitting patterns. I teach knitting workshops online and in person, and I sell yarn through my website YarnAddict.co.uk. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. Here is a mock buttonhole I made earlier. So this is in rib, and you can see if I pull it apart a bit here, you can see the buttonholes. So I just cast on a few stitches, knitted a few rows of rib, worked the buttonholes, and then carried on in rib. When you work buttonholes on a rib fabric, you have to make sure on the row after you do the buttonholes that you continue in the rib fabric as previously established. So just keep an eye out for that. But in this video, I'm going to show you how to do it on a garter stitch button band. I do a lot of garter stitch button bands. I really like garter stitch. Doesn't matter if you're doing it on a garter stitch or rib button band or moss stitch, it looks just as good. But I just thought I'd show you what it looks like on garter stitch as well. So I've cast on some stitches and just knitted a few rows back and forth. And I'm just going to knit the first 3 stitches. Obviously the pattern will tell you how many stitches to knit at the start. The main thing with this buttonhole, and why I think some people find it a bit difficult to learn, is because you do change directions a few times. So you just need to make sure that the first few times you do it slowly and carefully and follow the instructions carefully. I will copy the written instructions below, but I don't have anywhere where I can post the written instructions for you to download. So I will post them in the description below. If it's one of my patterns, it will have these instructions in it anyway. But knit the first few stitches. I've knitted 3. And the start of this buttonhole, there are a couple of different variations. This is how I do it. Doesn't matter if you knit English or continental style. I knit continental styles. I'm going to do that for this. But yarn at the back, put your needle purlwise into the next stitch and slip it off. And then take the yarn between the needles to the front. And now you should just let go of it because you're not going to use this for the next few stitches. And if you hold on to it, it's easy for it to get in the way. So take your yarn between the needles to the front. So it wraps around the back of that slip stitch and down to the front, and then just let go. Slip the next stitch purlwise. And then lift the first stitch over the second stitch, just like a normal cast off. So you've cast off 1 stitch now. Slip the next stitch purlwise, and then cast off another stitch, and then slip another stitch purlwise and cast that off. So instead of knitting it and casting it off like you would do for a normal knitted cast off, you're slipping the stitches and casting off instead. So your working yarn is over here at the beginning of that little gap. We're going to do 3 stitches. How many stitches you cast off depends on how big your buttons you have. If the pattern uses a certain size button, it's very easy to adjust it. You can knit the whole buttonhole in one go, pop your button through to make sure it'll fit, and then if it doesn't, if button is too big or the buttonhole is too big, you can just undo that one buttonhole and try again. The only thing is, if you adjust the buttonhole, the size of the buttonhole, you have to also adjust the number of stitches you work between the buttonholes. So 3-stitch buttonhole seems to be something that I use a lot for a lot of my patterns. So I'm going to stick with 3-stitch buttonhole for this. So I've now got the 3 stitches I knitted originally, then a big gap. So 3 stitches here, then I have a gap, and then I have 1 stitch. I'm going to put that stitch on its own back on the left hand needle. Make sure you do it purlwise. You're just slipping it from one stitch to the other. When you do it knitwise, you twist the stitch, and we don't want to do that here. This is what it looks like now. And now I'm going to turn to the other side. When you start this buttonhole, it doesn't matter if you start on the right side or the wrong side. If I'm doing a women's cardigan, because women's buttonholes are usually worked on the right hand side, and I like to work the buttonholes from the neck going down towards the hem. So I normally start working buttonholes on the wrong side. So it doesn't matter if it's the right side or the wrong side. Now we have the 3 stitches that we knitted at the beginning, plus our working yarn is on the left needle. And the working yarn is at the back. We're now going to use the cable cast on to cast on the number of stitches we cast off. So we cast off 3 stitches, we're going to cast on 3 stitches using the cable cast on. Many people know this cast on, but not everyone knows what it's called. I'll show you continental style first and then English style. You put your right needle tip in between the first 2 stitches. So not into the first stitch, but between the first and the second stitch. Okay, and then you wrap the yarn around like you're knitting a stitch. Like that. So I still have the original stitch on my left needle, don't take it off, and I have my new stitch on the right hand needle. When you put it on the left hand needle, put it on so that it's twisted. So instead of putting your needle in like that from the left, twist it around like that. Now, if you pull the yarn here and tighten it, sometimes it can be difficult to get your needle back in between the first and the second stitch. So what I always do is I put my needle in, and then I tighten the yarn. Knit up a new stitch, hang on. Knit up a new stitch, put that on the left hand needle tip. So that's 2 stitches. And before I tighten it, I'm going to put my needle in between those 2 stitches, and then I tighten it. And then do that a 3rd time. Like that. Now, if you lose count, you can see where you started, because where you have a gap on your needle here between 2 stitches, that's where you went in for the first stitch. So we don't count that first stitch after that gap. So that stitch was one of my original 3 stitches, and then I cast on 1, 2, 3. That last one does kind of fold over the middle stitch a little bit, but that's fine. So now I'm going to show you how to do it English style. So if you've already done it, just wait here for a second. And I'm going to take these 3 stitches off again and show you how to do it English style. Now, I don't knit English style, so I'm not as good at that. But I'm going to put my needle in between the first and the second stitch, like that, wrap the yarn around. When you're pulling the needle through, the main thing is to make sure you keep tension on this working yarn, otherwise it can be a bit difficult. That's my new stitch. Leave my original stitch on the needle and put this one on in front of it. And then before I pull tight to tighten this stitch, put my needle in so that I have enough room to get in between the 2 stitches. Wrap the yarn around, knit up a new stitch, put that new stitch on the left hand needle, and put my needle in again, wrap the yarn around, knit up a new stitch, and put that stitch on the new needle. Now I'm going to go back to doing it continental style now. So I've cast on 3 stitches. You're going to cast on the number of stitches you cast off, and then you're going to cast on an extra stitch. So if you cast off 3 stitches, cast on 3 stitches. If you cast off 4 stitches, cast on 4 stitches. So I'm going to cast another stitch, but don't put it on the left hand needle. Keep it here on the right hand needle like this. Then take the yarn between the needles to the front and let go. So the yarn comes between your needles to the front and let go. And then put that new stitch on the left hand needle. So I've now cast on 4 stitches. The 3 I cast off plus 1. So if you cast off 4 stitches, you will cast on 4 plus 1, i.e. 5. If you cast off 3 stitches, you'll cast on 3 plus 1, which is 4. These stitches are now on my left hand needle. We're now going to turn our knitting again, so we're back to where we started from, and we're going to close up this button band. Now we're going to slip the next stitch knitwise. So go into the next stitch as if you're going to knit it and slip it off, and then take the last stitch you cast on and lift it over that stitch you just slipped to cast one stitch off, and then pull your needle tight. So we've now got the same number of stitches we had at the beginning, 2, 4, 6, 7. So we knitted 3 at the beginning, and then we used 3 stitches for the buttonhole, and then we used 1 stitch to close it up. So 3 stitch buttonhole actually takes 4 stitches out of your total stitch count. Now you will get a little bit of a gap here. I'll talk to you in a minute about how you can close up that gap a little bit. You don't want that gap to be too big. Depending on your yarn and your tension and stitch pattern and things, it usually disappears once you finish the buttonhole. But if there is a problem, I'll show you on the next row how to get rid of it. So we're going to knit just a few more stitches. I'm going to show you one more time how to do another buttonhole. And then if you need to watch it again, you can go back to the beginning and watch it again. But I'll show you one more time. A little bit quicker this time. So slip the first stitch purlwise to the right needle. Take the yarn between the needles to the front and leave it there. Slip the next stitch purlwise. Lift the first stitch over the second stitch to cast 1 stitch off. Slip another stitch purlwise, cast 1 stitch off, and slip a third stitch purlwise and cast it off. We'll still do a 3 stitch buttonhole on this one. So that's 3 stitches I've cast off, and the yarn is at the beginning of that gap. Put that stitch that's left there on its own back on the left hand needle purlwise. You're not twisting it, you're just moving it across the other needle, and then turn your knitting. Yarn stays at the back, so yarn is now at the beginning of the left hand needle. Now to avoid this gap here at the start of the buttonhole, make sure you pull this working yarn a bit tight so that it doesn't leave too much of a gap there. And then go in between the first and second stitch. Now if you find that that gap here becomes too big, instead of pushing the whole needle through like that, try if you can to just poke the tip through like that. Especially if you're using bigger needles, just poke the tip through, pull up a loop, put that on the left hand needle in front of the old stitch, tighten it. Make sure you tighten it properly. Make sure you can get behind the new stitch. Just poke your needle in before you tighten it. So your needle goes in between the first and the second stitch, knit up a new stitch, put the new stitch on the left needle, put your needle in there, tighten the stitch, and then knit up a new stitch. So because we cast off 3, we're going to cast on 3 stitches. So we're not counting that stitch, first stitch after the gap. That was where we went in originally. So that was one of our original stitches. Then we got 1, 2, and this is the third one. And then we're going to cast on that extra stitch. So cast on the number of stitches you cast off, and then cast on an extra stitch. Like that. And this time we're going to leave that on the right hand needle, take the yarn between the needles to the front, let it go. I dropped the stitch there off the right needle tip, put that stitch back on the left hand needles. All my cast on stitches are now together, and just pull it tight a little bit, and then turn your knitting again. So now all your cast on stitches are on the right hand needle. We're going to slip the next stitch knitwise this time. This is the only time you're slipping in knitwise, is here. Slip the stitch knitwise, lift the last stitch you cast on over the stitch you just slipped, and here I always like to pull my working yarn just to tighten it up a little bit. So I normally just give it a pull here just to tighten it up a little bit. Like that. So that's the second buttonhole. Now I'm going to just knit to the end of the needle, and then I'm going to knit back again so you can see a bit better what this looks like. Now I come to my buttonhole stitches, so just knit across them. That is what they look like. So you can see the gap before and after has this blended in quite nicely now, and it's not a problem. If you find that either before or after the buttonhole stitches that you do get a bit of a gap, if it is a bit of a little bit loose here, pick up that strand that goes between the two stitches, you can see that strand is a bit long. Pick that up and put it on your knitting needle and then knit it together with the first buttonhole stitch. So you're not getting an extra stitch there, you're just picking up a bit of the slack. You could also, if you have a lot of extra slack there, you could pick it up and kind of twist it around like that. That's a little bit more tricky to do. You've got to pick it up. It goes from the front across to the back on your right needle, and then put your needle tip in from the left. So it's sitting twisted on your left needle, and then knit it together with that first buttonhole stitch. If it is a little bit loose, that's a good way to tighten it up. I do find it depends very much on what yarn I'm using and needles, and if it's a yarn like this, a nice round bouncy merino, then it's less of a problem. So I'm just going to knit a couple of more rows quickly and then show you what it looks like. So I finished a buttonhole now, and I've cast off. I haven't blocked this or anything. You can see that it kind of pushes the edging out. Normally this bit would be picked up from your cardigan, or at least on my patterns. I not always pick up stitches for a button band, or on the few occasions I've used it as on a scarf, you would only make one buttonhole. So on my Intarsia scarf and my Bergen mosaic scarf, you only make one buttonhole. But if you're doing it as a button band, this bit would be picked up, and then you do sometimes, when you cast off, end up getting like a slightly kind of wavy look to the button band. Can't see too well here. If you actually knit it onto another piece of knitting, you can. That is just the nature of this button band, because you have this hole here. It does push it apart a little bit, so it can look a little bit wavy. Once you're wearing the cardigan buttoned up with the button band, I don't think it's a problem. On this rib one, and it happens with rib as well, but on this rib one, when I pressed it, when I steam pressed it, I gave it like a bit of a stretch, and you have less of a trying to work out which way I knitted it. I think I knitted it in that direction. There is less of a kind of wavy look here than it is here. I don't mind that waving look, but I do appreciate that some people may not like it. So if you don't like that wavy look, this may not be the button band for you. But try it and see what you think. If you've tried this buttonhole or a variation on this buttonhole, let me know in the comments. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Do you have a better buttonhole? Do you prefer? Let me know in the comments. If you have any questions, please ask in the comments. And if you want to know more about all my finishing techniques, then do go and check out my online finishing techniques course. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.